discuss having the sex talk with your children. If you are a parent that is yet to do this, I suggest that you watch this video first before watching it with your child or your children. I am actually going to tell you how I told my daughter about sex. I will also answer the question about when is the right age to talk to your children about sexual intercourse. So be sure to watch until the very end. We live in a sexually saturated world. It is best that you prepare your children for it with a godly perspective. Sex is a fact of life. Avoiding the sex talk and passing the responsibility to someone else in society is very dangerous. Many parents avoid the sex talk with their children and just expect that their children will get to learn it in school. When a child is well prepared from home, it is less work for the teachers in school. Your children come from your body. It is best that they learn how they came to be from you. Please don't think it is awkward or overreact when faced with the curiosity of your child concerning this subject. I remember when my daughter asked me how she came to be and how she got out of my belly. I said to myself, we are getting there. She was 5 years old at the time. She had seen 2 pregnant women in church and wondered how babies got into their bellies and how the babies would come out. Do you see the importance of creating an atmosphere where your children can ask you anything? Some parents really don't know what's going on with your children because they are too strict or focus more on bossing them around than actually listening to them when they speak. You can learn a lot from children if you just let them speak and share their feelings and thoughts with you. So I responded to her truthfully that the doctor had to cut her out of my belly through surgery. She asked if it hurt, and I said yes. Bringing a child into this world is very painful. I also told her that I had a surgery, but there is another way that children come into this world, and when she's older, I will tell her all about it. Well, older for her was 9 years old. It helps that my daughter has a very scientific mind. She favors the sciences. She's very inventive and creative and has a research methodical approach in processing things. She's like a little scientist. So it was a very matter-of-fact conversation when I actually had the sex talk with her. And I will tell you exactly how I did it. But first things first. Number 1, plant the seed of sexual purity. I began teaching my children about their body parts consciously about the age of 2. Because at that age they can really communicate, and it was also based on my relationship with them and how I had protected them. So sometimes based on your environment, you may need to have that conversation with them quicker. But for me, 2 years old was good enough. To the glory of God, I have 2 children, a daughter that will be 11 next month in December, and a son that will be 9 years old in March next year. So why exactly is that part of your body called a private part? Children need to know that this part of their body is private. It is sacred. So I actually composed a call and response song to teach her when she was a 2-year-old about her body. And we call that part of her body initially privacy. And I asked her in the form of a song, is anyone allowed to touch your privacy? She would respond, no, 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 no. Don't touch my privacy. But she knew, and she said it with so much authority, she was now taking ownership of her body. And that all started from how I communicated to her the ownership of her body and what is private, and to know the boundaries and how she views herself. You know, children are so innocent they can get up and run around naked. But you need to teach them about their bodies and let them know that they cannot be touched anyhow. I also use the right labels. We graduated from calling it privacy to actually labeling it by its real name. For a girl, it is called a vagina. For a boy, it is called a penis. They must know what the body part is called so that if they are touched wrongfully, they are able to communicate intelligently to you what exactly is going on. I also taught them that their bodies belong to Jesus and to their spouse when they grow up. This gives the godly perspective that sex is only for marriage. We are also a hugs and kisses family, and I have taught them not to kiss anyone. Their lips belong to Jesus and their spouse when they grow up. Teach them not to be ashamed of their bodies, but to be protective of their bodies. They are valuable children of God, and their worth lies in God. Number 2, teach them about sexual predators. You know, some of us teach our children about stranger danger, but child sexual abuse has been discovered to be conducted by people very close to you. Be very approachable and ensure that your children can talk to you about anything. Study the personalities of your children. When you have energetic, happy, emotionally stable children and all of a sudden they're just withdrawing from you and they are tense and going silent and looking unhappy, investigate and find out why. Please do not leave your children with just anyone. Ask your children what happened at school. Ask your children what happened while they were watched by the babysitter or the nanny. Talk to your children and ask them how their day went every day. Tell them that anyone who informs them not to let you as their parent know something is luring them into secrecy and is most likely a predator. Teach them to talk to you about anything and everything. This is very important. You have taught them about ownership of their body and how valuable it is. They should not let anyone touch them anyhow, especially their private areas, lips, chest, breasts, thighs, vagina, penis, buttocks. Anyone that wants to talk about their private parts, touch their private parts, show them their own private part, show them naked images or videos, is a predator. They must inform you as their parent immediately. Number 3, how to actually discuss sex with your child. Well, I started off having a sex talk at the age of 9. Her body had began changing, and this is important when the signs of puberty are apparent. I spoke to her about her breasts. They will grow. I told her about her waistline and her hips, how her body will begin to change, taking on the curvy shape of a woman. And I told her that at some point in the future, she will begin her period, which is a monthly flow of blood that is a sign that she has become a woman and is capable of being pregnant. Now, how does a woman become pregnant? So this conversation kept on going because, as I said, she's very mature. She has a scientific mind, and she was taking the information very, very well, so I kept on going. I drew the reproductive organ of a woman and showed her some things. You can also show your child a diagram on Google if you don't draw well, because trust me, I don't draw well at all. But I was able to illustrate things well enough. I told her, your vagina is not only for urinating, it is a sexual organ. The penis is not just for urinating, it is a sexual organ. This is what sexual intercourse is. The penis of a man becomes stiff and erect and goes into the vagina of a woman. It goes in and out of her vagina until there is a sexual release called an ejaculation, which contains sperm. When the sperm meets with the egg in a woman's body, it becomes a child. That takes time to grow for 9 months, and the baby comes out through the mother's vagina. I told her that I had what is called a C-section, which is another way that women have babies if the mother or the baby is at risk. She understood, and I was relieved that she finally knew about sex. Please prepare your child, especially when you start noticing bodily changes. It is wrong to have the body of a woman and yet not know what sex is. Many have fallen into fornication as a result of ignorance and gotten pregnant too because they knew no better. The sex talk is not a one-time thing. You should always be there to clear things up because they will have questions. And please be as honest as you can. For instance, as she grows up and I talk to her about sex, I will tell her that it is pleasurable and she may be tempted to have it before the right time. However, it is best to wait for her God-ordained husband to enjoy having sex with him. Because when people don't wait for the right time to have sex, which is marriage according to the Bible, it is so pleasurable that they keep on doing it and keep on sinning against God. And this causes all kinds of damages and also puts your eternity in jeopardy. I will do this to continually give her the godly perspective before she is faced with such conversations in secondary school. Because this generation talks about sex a lot. So it is better you open up the discussion and have your children comfortable discussing sex with you. Number 4, always lead back to sexual purity. Because be mindful that the sex talk, beyond just telling them what goes where and how it works, you want to prepare them and teach them to obey God. You want to prepare them to live a life of sexual purity, which God has commanded us to do as his children. Okay, so always lead the sex talk back to sexual purity. In further conversations with my daughter, I have spoken to her this way. Now that I have told you what sex is all about, remember that God created it for marriage. As children of God, we are to obey God. When you go off to secondary school, in Nigeria, secondary school starts from grade 7 up until grade 12. So, when you go off to secondary school, you will see that some students have already started having sex. You will also discover that you will start liking boys and boys will start liking you. Remember that your body belongs to Jesus and your husband when you grow up. No other person has a right to your body. Having a boyfriend is not biblical. Having a fiance is. A fiance is intentional about marrying you. A boyfriend is not. If you are not ready to be married, you have no business being in a romantic relationship with any man. Your sexual desire will be triggered, so you must protect it and honor God with your life and your body. You can get pregnant if you start having sex. That's one reason why you must not have sex until you get married. Abstain from sex and romantic relationships with boys until you know that God has brought to you your God-ordained husband, the man that you will marry. Your courtship must honor God. No kissing and no sex until you become husband and wife. It's never strange for my daughter to hear me talk this way. I have been called by God to teach this generation about sexual purity, and I cannot be teaching others about sexual purity without teaching my own biological children about sexual purity. So, it's a conversation that is always reinforced how to maintain their sexual purity in a world that largely doesn't care about it. You see, when you talk to your children about sex and present it with a godly perspective, it prepares them for the heavily sexual world that we live in. It is also important to build your child's self-esteem. We are created in the image of God. We are a royal priesthood. Therefore, we are royalty. And when you value yourself, you won't just settle for anything. Please, it is very important to build the self-esteem of your children. They must be confident. They must know who they are in God. So, when is the right age to have the sex talk with your children? The truth is, sometimes your children are ready before you are. An innocent question can open up this conversation because there is just so much sexual awareness in this generation. Children are exposed to a whole lot of things because of the internet. And even if you are protective of what your children do on the internet, they may have a classmate in school that talks about sex openly because his or her parents did not put a guard over what this classmate has been viewing. So you will have to step in and undo the damage of this sexual discourse. Look at the maturity of your child and take note of your child's bodily changes. This will let you know when it is time. My son is 8. I have not had the sex talk with him, but I plan to do so within the next couple of years. Why? Age 10 is the benchmark for me, because here in Nigeria, some children head off to secondary school at the age of 10. And I rather he hears about sex from me first than a teacher in school or a classmate. By the time you get to the 7th grade in Nigeria, sex is opened up in biology as a subject. So it's better that you prepare your children before they go off to secondary school than they hear it and learn of sex in school. If you also look at the syllabus of your children's class, you can figure out when they will be taught about sex. So be sure to teach them about it first. Their teacher will typically not teach them about sexual purity. Their teacher will not teach them about the spirituality of sex. That is your job. This is why you must know God and His Word. Recently, we were reading the book of Genesis together, and I have them take turns as we go through the chapters of the Bible. So my son was reading, and his Bible version said, "And Adam made love to his wife Eve." I had to open up the conversation about sex again. He does not know what sex is, but we have talked about sex. Let me tell you what he knows. God created sex for marriage. It's what married people do as an expression of love for each other, and also how they create babies. Many people don't wait until marriage to have sex. As a child of God, it is wrong to do so. We must obey God. Having sex before marriage is a sin that is called fornication. Having sex with someone other than your spouse is a sin called adultery. God has commanded us in His Word to flee fornication and not to commit adultery. See? You can actually begin educating your children about sex before they get to the age where you have the sex talk with them. And the sex talk is basically telling them what sexual intercourse is all about. For instance, even though he does not know the technicalities of sexual intercourse and what it's all about, we have discussed pornography. I taught both my children that there are people who watch others having sex in videos or flipping through magazines. This is called porn. Sex is private, and it is a sin against God to watch others have sex. It will also affect your sexual purity. So if they ever come across porn, they should not entertain it in any way, but stay away from it and refuse to view it. Please keep having the sex conversation with your children. Prepare them for this sexually perverse world that we live in. God has not changed. He requires us to observe sexual purity. I always say it, that your Christianity is incomplete without sexual purity. Fornication and adultery lead to hell. Back in the day, sending children to single-gender schools was a way of curbing sexual unruliness. Sending the girls to an all-girls school, sending the boys to an all-boys school. However, with the rise of homosexuality in our generation and how it is no longer hidden, I have taught my children about homosexuality. I have taught them that inappropriate touches don't only come from the opposite sex. It can come from someone of the same gender. They should not welcome it and know that it is wrong. Because you must prepare your children that they will feel sexual desire when their hormones kick in. And experimenting on the same gender or on the opposite sex to deal with these feelings is wrong. Because some will present it as, it's okay, there's nothing to it. Your children must be taught to honor God with their bodies. Please do not overreact or yell at your children if they innocently stumble on something sexual or they're curious about their sexual organs. Talk to them calmly and matter-of-factly. You have been established as an authority figure over their lives by God. Lean on God for wisdom. Learn how to educate your children about sex instead of planting fear in their hearts. Please do not avoid this conversation. Better they hear it from you and God's perspective on it than to hear it from someone who believes in the worldly aspect of sex. And the worldly aspect of sex is have sex, enjoy yourself, get all the sexual experience that you can get because you will need it when you get married. That is all nonsensical nonsense. We are children of God and must do things God's way. Sex is a blessing from God and there is a right time to have it in marriage. Teach your children to have a relationship with God. It is much easier to honor God with your life and body when you have an understanding of Him and relate with Him. 1 Corinthians 6 verse 13. Now the body is not for sexual immorality but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Parents, God is counting on you to teach your children to follow Him. Please step up to your responsibility and do things right. This conversation, the sex talk conversation, should not be ignored. It is crucial that you prepare your children with a godly perspective for the very sexual and perverse world that we live in. I pray that talking about my experience with my children in this video has helped you and given you the confidence to tackle this now. Child abuse is very rampant. Educate and equip your children so that they are not victims based on ignorance. God bless you as you go forth and implement this. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for watching. If this video has been a blessing to you, hit the like button, stay subscribed, and share. God loves you, and I love you. God bless you.